Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Daily Debate. My name is Ahmed Nader and tonight we will be focusing on the presidential activities of Abdel Fattah al-Sisi on Saturday and in the past week on Thursday as well, as we'll be focusing on the meeting of the Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi with the President of Cyprus, Nikos Anastasiades, as part of the Governmental Supreme Committee, which was held for the first time on the presidential level. This meeting took place on Saturday, and on Thursday of the past week, President al-Sisi held a trilateral summit with the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas and Jordan's King Abdullah II as to be having ways or discussing ways of supporting the Palestinian cause in the upcoming weeks and months. But tonight we'll be having the top story for today, and it comes through the presidential activities of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, but from the new administrative capital and on the World Charity Day, as we did see through a post being posted by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi on social media, and more specifically on Facebook, that today is coinciding with the World Charity Day, and the top story comes in the same direction. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi had attended on Sunday the Charity Doors or Abwab al-Khair celebration at the new administrative capital, which targets raising the living standards of about 5 million citizens. The Abwab al-Khair is being carried out in coordination between the public and the private sectors and the civil society organizations. The ceremony comes as part of the state's efforts to provide social protection to the marginalized categories and improve the living conditions of the citizens. During the celebration, President al-Sisi inspected the largest humanitarian convoy organized by Tahya Masr Fund for supporting 1 million families nationwide. The event coincided with the International Day of Charity, commemorating the anniversary of the passing away of Nobel laureate Mother Teresa of Calcutta. And to be shedding more light on this event and the attendance of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to this event at the new administrative capital, the Abwab al-Khair, as we did see today, I'm honored to be having with me over the phone Dr. Osama Murad, the financial expert. Thank you very much for being with us tonight on the Daily Debate.
Thank you for hosting me.
Dr. Osama, first of all, how did you see the importance of the initiative or Abwab al-Khair, as we did see today at the new administrative capital, in the attendance of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, coinciding with the World Charity Day?
Well, it's a very important initiative and step by the President to underline the importance of NGO work, charity work, and acting as a social safety net for Egypt's population, which has a large percentage of less poor people. So it is a great initiative, and the President's attendance highlights that.
Yes, Dr. Osama, President al-Sisi also spoke about the role of the fund of Tahya Masr, as we did see today during the ceremony, and it did solve a lot of problems in the past few years, more specifically social and the economic problems in the country. How did you see the role of the fund of Tahya Masr in the past few years?
Well, it had a very significant role. It is the main driver of charity infrastructure, low housing, providing food, providing shelter, providing water to Egyptian villages. So it's working across all spectrums, and the strength of the funds is made by the large contributions as of the trust in the people who are responsible and in the President's personal sponsorship of the fund under his patronage. So it is not only giving away money and empowering people, but it's also removing any kind of red tape, and it's acting fast, and it's acting powerful, and it's acting effectively.
Yes, and still focusing on the Tahya Misr Fund, or the Long Live Egypt Fund, President Al-Sisi also said that he had directed the Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli to be increasing the resources or the sources of funding the Tahya Misr Fund. How did he see those statements, and what can be done in the near future to be reaching the goal of President Abdel Fattah Al-Sisi?
Because of its status, the fund is able to raise funds from the business community, and then also regular funds from employees and also from the people of Egypt. And those resources, I see Tahya Masr acting as a quasi-social solidarity ministry, but not acting only on the limitations of the mandate of the ministry, but also providing infrastructure, providing water, providing shelter, providing low-income housing. So it's really a supranational institution acting for the long-term benefits of the Egyptian people.
Mm-hmm. But the Tahya Misr Fund is being administered and monitored or managed by the government. What is the importance of this step?
Well, as long as the government is doing its role of transparency and the people see where the money is going, the trust will always increase, and the government's management ensures that there are no blocking stones in the way of social health care and the safety net and the housing, which all requires licensing and governmental procedures. So being under the government management loosens all those restrictions and help to achieve the goals faster.
Doctor, how did you follow the social protection programs being introduced by the government, and more specifically the political leadership under the tenure of President Abdel Fattah Al-Sisi?
There is a very strong focus which is unprecedented in modern Egyptian history. We've seen this with the Takaful and Karama. We've seen it with several social programs where the president is really having a strong focus on the 30 to 40% of the Egyptian people who are living at the poor level by international standards.
Yes, and the importance of coordination and cooperation between the government and the private sector, and as you mentioned at the beginning, the non-governmental organizations, the NGOs, to be interacting with the citizens and enacting the social protection programs. How do you see that?
It is in the benefit of all stakeholders, so the government, the private sector, the NGOs, to have social stability in Egypt. And this only comes through providing a social safety net. And this is exactly why people believe in the fund, support it, and demonstrate their full support in it. And so far, variable success stories, and always we say success stories achieve more success.
Yes, and this is hoping for more success in the future under the tenure of President Abdel Fattah Al-Sisi. Dr. Osama Murad, the financial expert, thank you very much once again for being with us tonight on the Daily Debate. We will be having a quick break, so stay tuned. The initiative of a decent life, or Haya Karima, as we did see in the past break, one of the main initiatives performed or implemented under the tenure of President Abdel Fattah Al-Sisi in the past years. The social protection programs have developed, as we did see today, the presidential activities of President Al-Sisi at the new administrative capital, Abwab al-Khair, to be implementing those social protection programs through the cooperation and coordination with the NGOs and the private sector as well. To be commenting on on the presidential activities of President Al-Sisi on Sunday. On Saturday, the meeting between President Al-Sisi and his Cypriot counterpart, and on Thursday, the trilateral summit between President Al-Sisi and the King of Jordan, Abdullah II, and the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. I'm honored to be having with me tonight on the Daily Debate Dr. Mohamed Naguib Abu Zaid, the professor at the American University in Cairo. Thank you very much for being with us tonight.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
First of all, before going to the first report of the evening, how did you see the activities of President Al-Sisi today at the new administrative capital, Abwab al-Khair, on the day or the day of the charity, not just in Egypt?
Closely, and I was pleased, and I like in the previous part of this program highlighting the fact that it's multifaceted effort.
Yes.
It's not going only in one direction. It's going, first of all, cross-sectional throughout the entire country. It's going into housing, into education, into healthcare, and so on. There are some of these areas haven't been touched or dealt with for decades. I don't want to go even more than that. So, and actually the president both highlighted the accomplishments and the challenges and the wishful and legitimately wishful aspiration for more funding, for raising the funds. And again, I like the fact that it's the Egyptian people in their entirety who are funding this kind of initiative. And I think one of the best that we have been seeing, and we start seeing the outcome of this, and I think you and me and the viewers are very pleased with the outcome.
It was funded by the Tahya Masr Fund. President Al-Sisi spoke specifically about the fund and the means of financing and finding more resources or new resources to be funding the Tahya Masr Fund through the directives from President Al-Sisi to the Prime Minister, Dr. Mustafa Madbouli. How do you see those steps being implemented in the future?
It's a good question, because that's one of the challenges that the president has raised, that he's asking the government, he's talking to the Egyptian people, and actually that's one of the greatest achievements of our president, that he keeps it open not only between him and the government, but he wants transparency, and he wants the involvement of the Egyptian people, not only the businessmen, not only those who have the means, but also those who can contribute, even with, you remember, even with £1, with a little bit of money, to have this kind of participatory approach. That's the essence of doing that. And people, and the Egyptian people are smarter than we used to deal with in the past decades. We nowadays targeting their aspiration. We're talking about roads, we're talking about villages that are being totally uplifted. I don't want to give specific examples, but I see them every day. Even in the informal settlement surrounding Cairo, they are being abolished gradually. So I go back to your very important point, raising the funds.
Yes. And
having the people work with this thrust, because it's still a long way to go. And when people, like your guest has highlighted earlier, success brings success.
Yes.
And when people have this kind of trust and this kind of confidence in the outcome, then they will contribute more, and they will not be hesitant to have this kind of contribution.
Yes, and success brings success from the local level to the foreign agenda, as we will be seeing in the next part of the Daily Debate, to be focusing on the Egyptian-Cypriot relations, as we did see on Saturday a meeting between President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and the President of Cyprus, Nikos Anastasiadis, as part of the presidential level of the governmental Supreme Committee between Egypt and Cyprus. We will be having more details on this meeting in the upcoming report.
The Supreme Egyptian Cypriot Government Committee convened on Saturday in Cairo. This is the first time the committee has convened at the presidential level. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and his Cypriot counterpart, Nikos Anastasiadis, held talks on means to invest in the great capabilities of the two countries to achieve common interests in a model to be followed in terms of interdependence and cooperation. The summit indicates the unprecedented level of partnership and the political will to develop joint projects. President Sisi updated his Cypriot counterpart with Egypt's efforts to arrive at a fair solution for the so-called Ethiopian dam and to resume negotiations leading to a legally binding agreement on the filling and operation of the structure. He said the international community has a serious role to play in the issue to maintain the stability of the region. For his part, Anastasiades said the summit is a new step in enhancing the strategic partnership of the two states, which he described as a pillar for regional stability. Anastasiades also emphasized the civilizational and cultural ties that extend throughout history, highlighting Cyprus' keenness to strengthen these relations at all levels.
Welcome back. Dr. Mohamed Naguib Abu Zaid, how do you see the meeting between President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and his Cypriot counterpart on Saturday and the bilateral relations in general between both countries under the tenure of President al-Sisi?
The relationship with Cyprus can be described in one word, which is strategic. And this meaning, this kind of the essence of that is being reinforced every day. A strategic relationship between two nations would mean it's through different kind of levels of cooperation, governmental all the way up to the presence, which was actually highlighted in this meeting.
Yes.
Also in different aspects of cooperation. One of the things that I think the viewers have noticed, talking about military cooperation, military maneuver that has been taking place over the past five years or more.
Yes.
Under the tenure of President Sisi, as you mentioned, agriculture, fishery, exporting and investment, both countries. Of course, the file of energy and gas and so on, and cooperation in that. You remember very well, together with Greece, that the President has made a very important step a few years ago, in which specifying and pinpointing the naval kind of borders.
Yes.
Between the three nations to eliminate any kind of dispute, future dispute, heaven forbid, or any kind of conflicts among nations. So I see it's an important meeting on every level, and as you mentioned in your introduction and in the report,
Yes.
actually the launching of the presidential and multi-level supreme kind of committee between the two nations. I want to share with you something that's quite typical and characteristic of what's going on around us with the government and definitely under the tenure of the president. We used to meet people in the past, and when I was in the parliament, they always say, and I'm talking about people in other countries, they say we have very important and very, let's say, promising agreements and so on, but they never been put into action, or they are kind of dormant. That's absolutely what's not happening now.
Yes.
You have the president, he has his talks, negotiations, he has his agreement, but then you have the ministerial level and sometimes even other levels in the government working on executing the agenda or the item that has been specified. And that's why, and you see it not happening once, you see it happening now, and you will see it after a few months and so on. So there is this kind of follow-up and fast, as you mentioned. That's one of the characteristic things of our president. He likes to achieve things in, he said several times that time is our first and main challenge. We want to achieve things in quite compressed time, if I could say so. So it's a truly important meeting, and I think soon it will be another meeting with the President of Cyprus as well as in Greece, because the three countries have established quite a strong bond that created an important and pivotal kind of model in the eastern part of the Mediterranean Sea.
Why was it one of the main goals of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi's foreign agenda to be having better relations and stronger relations and strategic relations between Cyprus and Greece as well in the past few years?
It's quite legitimate and important kind of question. The three countries, viewers, and I should be reminding myself also, there has been a historic ties with these countries since thousands of years, without any exaggeration. So there is a depth in this kind of relationship. But when you talk about the stability of the region, when you talk about what's happening in the east, what east borders of Egypt, all the way to Syria, Iraq. We wish our friends in Lebanon more stability and so on. West to Libya, and all the illegal immigration takes place in the northern part of Africa to Europe. So the area of the Mediterranean Sea is receiving an increased attention over the past 5 or 6 years. And that's why Egypt needed to establish this kind of coalition that protects also its interest. One of the let's say highlights of the Egyptian foreign policy these days, and thankfully so, is we look to our interests, where our interest is, and our interest is to have trusted allied that will work with us in stabilizing the area, that will be trusted also in sharing with us resources and investment. For example, one of the main items that were there were some main items, but one of them was investment, increasing and enhancing the investment of the separate one in Egypt and vice versa. So it's important to establish that, and let me also refer to the military maneuver that I alluded into earlier. And Egypt really realized, and we were all wondering why is that important, but days and time proved that this is a much needed kind of cooperation as time goes by.
Yes, speaking of the committee, the governmental committee between Egypt and Cyprus, Doctor, you mentioned that the relations between Egypt and Cyprus are strategic now. What is the importance of having a committee between Egypt and Cyprus, and the significance of holding a summit or a meeting between both presidents and convening this committee at the presidential level?
I like to answer by the last part of your question.
Yes.
It's a committee that involves ministers of, I could name the foreign minister, education, energy, youth, health, environment. So you're talking about almost all the means of cooperation that a country could have with another country. Of course, agriculture as well. So that again takes us back to the strategic relationship. But to give this committee a boost, it's not being left on one level only, but the two presidents themselves launch that. They go through the files with their cabinets, and then put a roadmap to be followed upon in the months to come. And that's what I trust very well that inshallah will happen, and that's what yields an outcome. Again, on everyone's level, whether you're working in a company or in a university or in a factory, if you have a roadmap and it's been not followed up upon, even when it's the best, there is a famous saying that plans are not that important, but planning is everything. So the plans will be there, but you have to do a planning, the act of planning itself, and reaching something out of it. And again, I think you have followed up that the separate president, Nicholas, mentioned that he was received always with warmth in Egypt, and he invited our president to be again visiting Cyprus. This tells you really that this relationship is being fortified, and let's not forget that the kind of threats surrounding us. And Cyprus itself is a country that is suffering from some kind of unfair and unjust handling of some of its important kind of issues over the past 2 decades.
Yes.
And that's why it was also important as a support of Egypt in this regard. Before I leave this point, there is something I need to highlight here, and I thank you for your questions on that.
Yes.
Cyprus and Greece in particular represent two major supports for Egypt within the EU. They are both members of the EU, and Egypt has, I don't want to use the word wonderful, but it's like wonderful relation with almost all the countries of the EU and other countries as well, and it's very balanced foreign policy. But the two countries kind of act like two supports for Egypt within the EU. And let's not forget that the EU is the first trade partner, the major trade partner for Egypt. And therefore, Egypt having allied within the EU on that strategic level support its overall relationship with the European Union.
Speaking of this alliance between Egypt, Cyprus and Greece, the president of Cyprus, Nikos Anastasiadis, he said that they have the same views with Egypt regarding Libya, for example, regarding the Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. What is the importance of those statements specifically regarding the Ethiopian Renaissance Dam?
Okay. I so much like to talk about that, but let me take your question a little bit further. Let's see what they discussed. They discussed the Afghani situation, the Palestinian conflict and major issues, Libya and the need for election in December and the need for having Libya back on track and all the foreign forces to be outside, and the Ethiopian, I don't want to call it conflict, but we hope that it will not be a major conflict, but definitely it's a worry for the Egyptian people and the Egyptian leadership that we need really to be comforted about. They both share the same views, like Egypt shared the same views with Cyprus regarding other conflict between Cyprus and other countries and gives that the kind of support.
Yes.
Specifically on that, I would like to say that Cyprus support Egypt and Sudan very legitimate. I don't want to use only the historic word historic, but it's a matter of survival, it's a matter of life. Rights for the water of the Nile, the share of the water of the Nile. And as rightly so mentioned in your report, the filling and the operation of there are two things here that are quite fundamental. How this dam is being filled, at which rate, and how it's going to be operated to ensure at all times the right flow of Egypt's share of water. And again, I will have to say Egypt population is expanding. So imagine that we need more water, and heaven forbid, we are worried about our current share that we're having. And that's why the support of the international community in having this conflict with, and the president used the word, with a committing kind of agreement from the Ethiopian and all the supporting countries in Africa in this regard.
Yes, speaking of investments and the economy and the benefits for both countries, Egypt and Cyprus, one of the main issues that was spoken of during the summit or the meeting between President Assisi and the President of Cyprus, Nikos Anastasiadis, was the Euro-Africa interconnector project to be linking the power grids of Egypt and Cyprus and to be benefiting not just Cyprus but for the whole of Europe as well. How do you see this project?
The project is, let's say, a terrific one. Why I use this word terrific? Because Egypt has a surplus supply of energy, electric energy. Also, the viewers have to realize that we're even expanding, Egypt is expanding, and smartly so, on other sources of renewable energy. And so we will have, and that's good, to have this surplus of energy. And Cyprus, again, and Greece are going to be two gateways for the supply of this energy to Europe. And Egypt, as it goes through this kind of steps, it would be great if that's this kind of expansion in the future is switching gradually from the fossil energy, the kerosene, benzene, oil, petroleum derivatives, and coal, and so on. We don't have that much coal, but like that, and yes, even gas, and into the clean and the renewable energy. And that's why it's of interest, because Europe, politically speaking, also are allowing less of non-renewable energy and accepting more of the renewable energy, and that's a good opportunity. And in your question, and I would like to use this word, Africa, Egypt is a key country in Africa.
It's a gateway.
Great investor in the region. And those who want to have entrance to Africa, as you said, gateway, perhaps will be difficult to do it without a good partnership with Egypt. Not only because of the strategic, wonderful position of Egypt, geographically speaking, but also of the human resources, because of the experience, because to penetrate a market, any market, you need a good partner to work with, and Egypt is always that good partner to European and Chinese and other countries. And that's why you see a multitude of disagreements with other countries.
Does this mean that Egypt could be benefiting from the expertise of Cyprus and Greece in terms of solar energy, for example, the renewable energy in the future?
Definitely there will be some exchange of experience in this regard, but I would like to highlight one particular aspect in the investment climate in Cyprus.
Yes.
I think you may know, I'm sure you do know, that Cyprus provides a model of, let's say, investment that's really encouraging for foreigners. One of the major thrusts of any economy is FDI. Foreign directed investments. And Cyprus is a truly attractive pole in this regard. Egypt has been trying, and I think we achieved some success. We still have some way to go in facilitating the environment for attracting the investors. Not only attracting them to come, to stay, and providing them with the assurance, because that's a key aspect of exiting whenever they want to. So, since it's a strategic relationship, Egypt could also benefit from the experience of Cyprus in this regard. I just took that as one good example, in my view, of this kind of cooperation in terms of investment, and definitely energy and otherwise. There was also the aspect of naval transportation. When you look to Cyprus, where it's located in the middle eastern part of the Mediterranean Sea, and where Egypt is, and Egypt, as it has both on a military level and both on its transportation and commercial level, two major naval fleets on that, then definitely having this kind of cooperation is a fruitful one.
And on cooperation, the stance of Egypt and Cyprus is practically the same on Libya, not just about the country itself and facing terrorism and the conflict within it, but the illegal migration as well that could be affecting Europe in the future. What was the same stance that both President Assisi and President of Cyprus, Nikos Anastasiadis, expressed, that they have the same stance regarding the North African country?
Great. Let me start by something a little bit different, and then I get to that right away.
Yes.
Perhaps the most repeated sentence of the president in this meeting was to hands off any kind of interference in the internal issues of any country. And that does not only mean Libya. It means, or it refers not only to Libya, it refers to other countries as well. It refers to Cyprus itself and the kind of non-legitimate kind of aspiration of other countries into Cyprus and interference,
yes,
if I would use this word. So that was one repeated sentence which was very well meant by the president. When it comes to Libya, I think it was a very clear message from both leaders that all the foreign forces to be out of Libya, and Libya is to go back to the Libyan citizens. Not only we're talking not only about Libya as armed forces. That's of course essential. That's always very clear.
I think the same stance is always being expressed by President Assisi regarding any Arab country, specifically Iraq, in the past week as well.
Yes.
The same statement was made by the president.
Yes, and it also sent a message to other countries not to interfere into other countries, including Egypt or any other country in the region. But if I were to say one more thing about Libya, it's the foreign or the armies or any kind of troops inside.
Mercenaries.
Also the economic part, the oil there. Libya is one of the great countries in their supply of petroleum, and its strategic actually kind of storage over the years. And again, Libya has been, for Libya, Egypt and Algeria, but perhaps Libya more, one of the closest gateways to Europe. So I go back to your point about illegal immigration. If you sit with European leaders and ask them what is the first kind of worry or concern with respect to Africa and the Middle East, while everything else is important, but illegal immigration is one of the most, let's say, worrying or worrisome kind of files for them, because it puts them into the tough choice between human kind of actions and between kind of the disturbance of their social fabric, economy, and so on. So it needs to be regulated. And speaking of that, although that's not our topic now, but Europe is still in quest for trained labor, for skilled labor, to go and immigrate legally to Europe. And that's where the opportunity is that if the northern African countries and Africa in general and the Middle East could regulate that and supply Europe with trained workforce, then it will take a completely different turn, and that will be a desirable one.
Yes, and finally, before leaving this file, how can the regular meetings between President Al-Sisi and the presidents of Cyprus and the Prime Minister of Greece as well, can be confronting the provocations of Turkey in the Mediterranean?
Well, I try to avoid the word Turkey in all my previous talk, just not to pinpoint to Turkey, but definitely, since you bring it up, I would say that, yes, definitely, Egypt is in support of Cyprus against this kind of provocation, and Egypt supported Cyprus not only in these meetings, but also on the floor of the UN. Because the stability of countries in the region, that's a very important concept in politics. If countries nearby you are unstable, definitely it will get you one way or another. If nothing else, you will have some kind of uncontrolled immigration and so on.
Yes.
And the Cyprus president expressed his appreciation and thanks to the Egyptian president for his support in this regard. So it was not only done, but it was felt by the Cypriot people and by Cyprus president.
Yes, we will be heading to the presidential activities of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, but that happened at the end of last week, the meetings or the trilateral summit between President al-Sisi, Jordan's King Abdullah II, and the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. More details are in the upcoming report.
A trilateral summit between Egypt, Jordan, and Palestine's leaders was held earlier this week in Cairo to discuss a number of issues of mutual concern, including the Palestinian cause. On Thursday, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi received Jordan's King Abdullah II and Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas at the presidential palace. Egypt and Jordan have been in talks with regional and international sides to revive the long-frozen talks between the Palestinian and Israeli sides in accordance with the international resolutions, the Arab Peace Initiative, and the two-state solutions, with the aim of establishing an independent Palestinian state with East Jerusalem or Al-Quds as its capital. President Sisi, during a meeting with Abbas ahead of the summit, stressed that Egypt would proceed with its painstaking efforts to support the Palestinian cause. He highlighted the importance of rallying efforts in the coming period to support a political settlement pushed towards resuming negotiations and maintain the Palestinian-Israeli truce. He also called for the unification of Palestine's ranks and reconciling all Palestinian factions so that they may support the Palestinian Authority and its role in the Gaza Strip. For his part, Palestinian President Abbas hailed the efforts of Egypt to support the Palestinian cause. He also cited the initiative launched later by President Sisi to reconstruct Gaza, stressing the depth of Palestinian-Egyptian ties. The two leaders agreed during their talks to hold continued consultations to discuss various issues of mutual concern, as well as future steps for supporting the Palestinian cause at all levels.
Welcome back. Dr. Mohamed, Naguib, Abu Zaid, how did you see the trilateral summit? First of all, between President Al-Sisi and the King of Jordan and the President of Palestine, through the efforts of pushing or reviving the Palestinian-Israeli stall talks once again?
The way I see it, I think, is quite clear to everyone. Egypt is sending the message and acting with this message that the Palestinian issues, the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, is the core issue and the core instability, cause of instability in the region. And again, as you mentioned, it comes in a time that the world and the region is overly occupied and concerned with many other files, whether locally or globally. But still Egypt, and that's not the first time this thing happens. Actually, it happened on several levels over the past year. Just for example, that this remains a main focus for the Egyptian people and for the Arab world as a whole. Let me not be overly proud, which I am as a proud Egyptian. I would say that we are perhaps, or we are certainly the one country that you would hear of anywhere who's constantly supporting the Palestinian cause, and this happening for years, for decades, and with a heavy price paid. And we do that because we believe into the Palestinian cause and in resolving this issue. Also on our own stability, this issue has to be resolved. It's well said and well known that the Palestinian-Israel conflict is like the mother issue. It's the mother conflict of
for the Arabs and for the region, yes,
and for the region. And several, you can think of many other instabilities that are happening here and there are coming like subsidiaries of this kind of major conflict. And again, as you mentioned, it comes in a time that people would think that this has been frozen, this has been being stalled, but Egypt gives that a push and tries to revive that. I would like to mention one thing here that's important, which is about the timing of this. When is this happening? You and the viewers realize very well that last November and practically the beginning of this year, when that became in effect, that there has been a transition and change into the American cabinet, the U.S. leadership, presidency, and cabinet as a whole.
Yes.
And that brought with it the kind of not only concern, but also brought the kind of the view that we have to push with this new administration, this cause, because definitely America, the U.S. will play an important role in this regard. But this will not happen unless we in the Arab region, and particularly Palestinians, are in one line, in a unified kind of stand to make this a reality.
Would there be a change of stance by the American administration under Joe Biden?
Historically, it has been, the case that during the era of Democrats, there were more progress in that particular. Let's not forget that during the Republican administration has been the so-called transition of the embassy, American embassy, into Jerusalem. This never happened before during the Democrats over several presidents. And we're not talking here about this issue in particular, but we're talking about that as a sign of a support, or at least trying to contain this kind of conflict. So the change will take place, and I think what happened last May, the Gaza, the confrontation took place in Gaza with Israel, and that put actually Israel, not only the Palestinians, into some kind of hot water that, and Egypt again played a most significant role in containing and resolving this issue. I think these are all act as a reminder that this should not continue for long. And as you said, as we all say, as the report mentioned, the two-state solution has to happen very soon, with East Jerusalem as the capital for the Palestinians. And I think Joe Biden, in more than one speech or talks, he kind of sent the message that he's on the track of this. Usually, one thing I want to mention, that American president usually act on major issues in their second year and third year of. That's just something, an observation. They give themselves the very hot topics or conflicts. They don't usually tackle it in their first year, They have preparatory meetings, talks, and so on. But usually the big action happens in the second and third year. The fourth year, they try to be cautious again in preparation.
Especially that he was a bit unlucky with the issue of Afghanistan now.
Yes, several things. Afghanistan and the
first year.
Yes, and internally, the hurricanes that are hitting or hit the East Coast and Louisiana and most of the East Coast of the United States, these are internal issues.
Coronavirus.
Exactly, but that's a global one.
At the same time, yes.
And yes, but you're right about the coronavirus in the sense that I hope this is wrong, but the uprising again of another wave and so on, and the increase of infection worldwide, and God save us all. Worldwide.
Yes, hopefully in Egypt as well. Finally, we have 2 minutes. How do you see the fate of the talks and the push of Egypt to be having more talks and reviving those talks successfully in the future, specifically in the Gaza Strip, as Egypt has sponsored a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip despite the sporadic attacks by Israel?
Yes, Egypt has supported that. Egypt has sent the message not only of stability and of kind of ceasefire and so on, but of the reconstruction of Gaza and the economic enhancement of the situation there.
$500 million allocated for Gaza.
Exactly. And we talk about all this kind of political aspect. Let's look at the human situation. Lack of electricity, water, I won't even talk about other things, education, health in this kind of international crises. So Egypt has been a partner in all of that and is supporting that. When I say these words, I don't want them to be perceived as if we are trying to show what we are trying to do. Egyptians in general, both leadership and people, feel that we want to do that. It's our historic role to do that. But definitely we need partners to support in that, and that's why meeting with the Jordanian king and with other future Arab leaders and partners from Europe and other parts of the world will definitely give this a push forward.
Yes, Dr. Mohamed Naguib Abu Zaid, the professor at the American University in Cairo. Thank you very much for being with us tonight on the Daily Debate.
Thank you very much.
Anytime. And this brings us to the end of the Daily Debate for tonight. Thank you for watching and goodbye.